Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditam astu ma vitvishavahi. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cover with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. The state of samadhi is a question that has been asked before we started. The question sits in this way. Can anyone attain samadhi, or is it just the exclusive privilege, if you will, or attainment of monastic life? So my quick answer to that was, no, anybody can get the samadhi, but as with every question, we have to see what do we mean by samadhi and what do we mean by what is called sannyas, renunciation. Let's start off with the second part first. Renunciation is necessary for everybody. But what is meant by renunciation? So that's something we should explore. Fortunately, the Bhagavad Gita gives us an answer to this question. Because the question is in fact entitled Moksha Sannyas Yoga. This is the 18th chapter. Moksha Sannyas Yoga. It's exactly your question. So, see, in modern times, the term sannyas or renunciant will, it raises in the mind of any student the picture of an ordained monk or nun. But Arjuna is asking the Lord in this chapter to decide which course is the more beneficial. Is it something that is termed sannyas, or is it karma yoga? Now, when this question is asked, neither Krishna nor Arjuna think of monastic life. They don't have this, not as an alternative to the yoga of action. And so Krishna even affirms that the person who is a perpetual sannyasin, who is somebody who neither hates nor desires, and who is free from the pairs of opposites. And presumably we get moksha through this way. So the short answer to your question, in a sense, would be a questionnaire to yourself, in a sense, that do you have any hates? Now, the opposite of hate is desire. We can put it as roughly opposites. If you desire something, it's to get away from something else on the opposite side, and is free from the pairs of opposites. What do we mean by pairs of opposites? Well, we are often affected by all kinds of things in life, pairs of opposites, physically, hot and cold, pain and pleasure, even in the mind it's like that, praise and blame. In other words, our reaction to our environment. How do we react toward our environment? How do we take whatever is presented to us and systematically transform it into a positive, transform it into something that is more fruitful, something where we can delight in an inner way and yet not have any regrets about it, some stability of the mind. So this is when we are immune to any pairs of opposites. Whatever life has to throw at us, as it were, it seems that way, isn't it? Whatever life has to seemingly throw at us, we can stand back. Now, if you remember, well, some of you may, there are 4 R's in terms of response. First of all, the initial impact of reacting. We can't avoid it. This comes from our heaven level, and so immediately we will react in a habitual way. Swami Vivekananda, in his lectures, gives us the example of somebody stealing his watch. Supposing I like watches, and then somebody steals my favorite watch, maybe it belonged to my grandfather or something, and then a reaction occurs. It can be anger, it can be blaming, it can be cursing, it can be all kinds of things. But it's just a watch. It's just something that can be replaced. And so instead of reacting with anger or something that is harmful to ourselves, primarily harmful to ourselves and harmful to others, because don't forget, every kind of reaction, every kind of thought will have its equivalent on the unconscious level. We can't avoid it. Everything that happens, whether it's physically, whether it's mentally, whether it is thought, emotion, whatever it is, leaves its imprint on the unconscious mind. You can say subconscious, but it's not that it's inferior. Most of our mental makeup is in the unconscious area. So we take the reaction and we are observing it, given that it happens within a framework of time. And observing it come up, we give it a few seconds, we allow it that. Like taking a dog for a walk and allowing it a little freedom to sniff here and there, and then bringing it back. And every time it misbehaves, we train it in a certain way. So the mind is exactly like this, and that's all we're dealing with is the mind. So we take our initial reaction, and what is the next step? We take a step back, and we can see how we can review such a thing, what happened. And we may certainly recognize all reactions from the past. For example, somebody stole my toy when I was 5. And I cried, and I screamed, and I was angry. In adulthood, if we see the same kind of behavior in a slightly more sophisticated format, maybe an internal movement is there, not as expressed as a 5-year-old. So social norms prevent us from behaving in exactly the same way. But then we have to revalue it. Now, let us see. Revaluation comes from a very reasonable position, which states something like this in the context: our watch can easily be replaced. Perhaps this person wanted it. There's this great story of a saint who was, I think it was Trilokya Swami, and he had nothing. And then somebody took a brass pot of his, and he ran after him. And the thief thought, oh, he's going to catch me, I'm going to be in trouble. But eventually the renunciant caught up to him, breathless no doubt. He said, wait, you forgot the lid. And he gave him the lid. Because you see, a renunciant means I'm not attached to people or places or events or objects, because I'm re-registering them to the divine account. All this belongs to you. All of this belongs to you. Even this energy that is being used belongs to you. I'm not the owner. And therefore I have no reason or no right, if you will, to own anything. So with that in mind, what is meant by sannyasa and karma, or karma yoga, or it's called tyaga really, this question arises. And all of it means letting go. So, perpetual sannyasa, a perpetual renunciant, let's not use the word monk or nun, who neither hates nor desires, and who is free from the pairs of opposites. And what sannyasa means, of course, in the context is the path of knowledge, called Sankhya, otherwise called Jnana Yoga. Many people would want to practice that. Many people who come here have gone to Ramana Maharshi's place, and he is a great example of a modern day Jnana Yogi. Simply asking the question, what is the reality? And eliminating all the possibilities where something is not permanent. Reality meaning permanent. But for most people, it will be something to do with karma yoga or maybe karma bhakti, which is sweeter, offering all activities to the divine. And so really, that's also a kind of renunciation because it's renouncing ownership. It's saying that I am not a profit-actor complex, I'm not the agency, and I'm not the one who profits. So the wise declare sannyas to be the giving up of desire-impelled actions, and tyaga, which is the alternative, is the abandonment of the fruits of your actions. So these the total giving up of the two kinds that are mentioned, that I've just mentioned, can be achieved when this profit-actor complex gets transcended. So let us have a look and see what the passage has to say. It begins with a question, because these two things have been mentioned. Samjasasya, it begins like that. Arjun said, Mighty Armed, I desire to know the true nature of and distinction between renunciation, called sannyasa, and the relinquishment, called tyaga. It was Ramakrishna who said, Bhagavad Gita, if you repeat Gita, 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 it comes out as tyagi, 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 which means renunciation. But renunciation of what? Of the effects or the fruits of your activity. Giving it back to the real owner. And so the Lord is replying, the renunciation of actions prompted by desire, the sages understand as sannyasa. But the abandonment of the fruit of the actions, the wise declare as tyaga. In other words, there are the jnana yogis and there are the karma yogis. And then Tyajam, it goes like this. Some philosophers declare that all actions should be given up as evil. If this action hooks me into this world, then I should surely give it up. Give up every action. Stay in bed probably. While others say that the actions of worship, charity, and austerity should not be given up. This is the problem with philosophers. But we are set aright because the truth comes out. Learn from me the truth about this abandonment. Abandonment truly has been declared to be of three kinds. What are these three kinds? Well, they fall into yajna, acts of worship, charity, that is giving things, dana, and austerity. So these three things, acts of worship, charity, and austerity, should not be given up, but must be performed because worship, charity, and austerity are purifying to the wise. Why are we doing all this, any kind of effort? It's only to purify the mind, that's all. In the lectures that Swami Vivekananda gives on karma yoga, he begins like that. Why do we go about doing karma yoga? It is to purify the mind. Any action that does not purify the mind will create a blockage there and sustain our ignorance. And so even these actions, which actions? Acts of worship, that is for bhakti yogas; charity, that is for the karma yogis; austerity, that is for those who want to meditate, for example. Even these actions should be performed without attachment and desire for the fruit thereof. There's no such thing as competitive spirituality or competitive meditation. We should do all the actions in spiritual life, worship. Now, I should tell you that all of these three should be done together. So, worship, what is worship? It is a kind of sense of adoration, wonder, and thankfulness about all the things given freely all around. It's not necessarily doing any ritual. What is charity? Charity is seeing the other in a spiritual way. So, having a penetrating vision to go and see, oh Lord, you're standing there. Every person, therefore, is an opportunity for adoration in a human form. It's a different kind of adoration. And then what about austerity? Nothing makes any sense if we don't have the strength and discipline to operate the will. That is why people do fasting. This is why people restrain themselves in certain circumstances, because they want to strengthen the will, because these are aspects of the mind. There's a feeling aspect to the mind. There's a thinking aspect to the mind. There's a willing aspect to the mind. All of these have to be mobilized. But even these actions that should be performed without attachment and desire for the fruit. Fruit means the effect. Fruit, I plant a seed, it develops into a fruit tree. The fruit is not mine. And then the abandonment of any obligatory duty whatsoever isn't proper. This kind of abandonment, this kind of giving up, because don't forget we're talking about giving up, letting go. This kind of abandonment out of ignorance, that is declared to be tamasaka, full of dullness, full of darkness, not having any intelligence in it, just giving up. But the person from whom, or from the person who, from fear of physical suffering, abandons action, thinking that this action is painful. I won't do this, it's painful to me. Then this performing of this kind of giving up will be rajasika. That means I want people to leave me at peace, and obtains not the fruit. I think I told you previously, way back, maybe a few weeks back on United Nations Peace Day, it was told, oh, people want peace, and the peacemakers are those who are saying this. No, I contested it. Nobody wants peace. It's very evident. It's very evident in the current affairs that's going on. Peace is just an ideal that people speak about. And most people, when they talk about peace, is leave me at peace. Don't disturb my peace. Never mind if I disturb others. So, whatever obligatory work that has to be done, merely because it ought to be done. And do we have examples of that? Yes. Whatever job we're engaged in currently, that has to be done. Earning a living has to be done. But there are more obvious obligatory actions. Eating is an obligatory action. Sleeping is an obligatory action. And living in the world, whatever that entails, is an obligatory action. And so, whatever obligatory work or action, you can say, that is done, just because it has to be done, it ought to be done, we have no other choice, giving up attachment for it and for its fruit, that kind of renunciation is called sattvika. Obviously, that's the one which has the highest the highest spiritual benefit, because it is the highest cleanser for us. It is the one that cleanses the mind, that cleans the mind and fills it with illumination. It's all very well cleaning a pot, but if a pot just stands on the shelf, no, you have to fill it with something that is more fulfilling, something that is useful. So the wise person of renunciation, imbued with this sattva and his doubts dispelled, he doesn't, what are the characteristics of such a person? He doesn't hate anything that is disagreeable. And with his doubts dispelled, neither does he hate anything that is disagreeable, nor is he attached to agreeable work. Sometimes we settle down to work, and we kind of unconsciously even categorize the work into things we like to do and things we don't like to do. But the person of sattvic concentration, will not make any of these distinctions. They'll simply, from a kind of removed area, do all the actions. And if this is not just karma, but karma bhakti, doing all actions for love of the divine, then that adds a certain sweetness. What it means is that at every unit activity that we do, we have all our concentration, all our concentrated energy in that unit activity, which means we don't care about the content of the activity. We only care about the quality of the activity. Don't forget, yoga is described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter as being evenness or equilibrium of mind and skill in action. If we combine these two, it means being efficient without disturbing the mind through anxiety. And anxiety comes when we are attached to the fruit of the action. We are concerned about the results. But if we did the action without any concern for that, we will find that it is much more efficient, because we are putting all our energy into this current moment and forgetting about everything else until this moment is finished. And then the next moment is there, and the next piece of work or action takes place. And you'll find that all of these things are to do with concentration. Now, the highest form of concentration, where everything unites into one thing, is called samadhi. What is samadhi? Samadhi is that state where there is no thought whatsoever in the mind. Having gone through meditation where one thought is there continuously in the mind, not just repetitively, but like a flow. And those who have experienced that will understand what I'm saying. Flow that gives us a feeling of pure being, nothing becoming, no object there, subject and object united. When even that goes away, then we have samadhi. And samadhi, of course, is our varying types. We broadly categorize it into two areas. And so one is with a slight sense of distance, and one where it's completely no distance whatsoever, no time whatsoever. That's called nirvikalpa samadhi. The other one is savikalpa samadhi, which has a blissful state, and compared to standing in a position where, like, for example, like a corridor with rooms, and you can see behind and you can see beyond, you can see the rooms laid out there, and then you can see another place which is full of light, something along those lines. In other words, you see the reality, you feel the reality, you're close to the reality, but you also see the others, the other stages. In any event, whether it's nirvikalpa samadhi or savikalpa samadhi, all can attain this, given these positions, these senses of renunciation. So it's indeed impossible for an embodied being to renounce action entirely. As long as we have a body, as long as we feel embodied, we will be active. you will have to do some action. But the person who renounces the fruit of action, that's regarded as one who's renounced. Not somebody who goes away in a cave, not somebody who extracts themselves from a situation, but somebody who acts as they should act, but no attachment to the results, to the fruit of the activity. We don't care about the results. The results will look after themselves. Whether we succeed, whether we fail, it doesn't make any difference to us. We're not there to succeed, nor are we there to fail. We're there simply to live in the current moment, the current presence, with a sense of full faith, full understanding, and full love. And in that way, we do all our actions. Now, what happens when we are proficient in this? In other words, when all our actions, all our thoughts, and so on become so sattvic that they outweigh anything else, then a realization occurs by itself. The threefold fruit of action that we normally think of when we do something is good, bad, and mixed. And all of that, there's the results of those actions, of course, accrue after death to one who doesn't renounce. But there is no accrual at all for the person who does renounce, and therein lies your samadhi as a permanent state. So, of course, the text of the 18th chapter goes on from there, talking about karma, about action. But I think we'll leave room for other questions, and I hope that answers your question. So I open the floor once more for further. If there are no further questions, we'll go on with the 18th chapter, of course. Well, it's worthwhile going on with it then. The body, the doer, that is the ego, the various senses, the many and different functions of life energy, which we call prana, and the presiding deity of the senses as the fifth. So this is in the context of a lesson of the 5 factors in the accomplishment of all activity. There are 5 things that have to be involved. And this, of course, is stated by the Sankhya philosophy, which every system agrees with. So the Sankhya philosophy describes a number of different tattvas, all of which are engaged in activity. The aggregate called the body, we know. The sense of doership, that is the ego, we also know. We all have a self-identity. The various senses, internal and external, we know. This is distinct from the body. We're now going into what is the mind. And the many different functions of the life energy that come out as psychic prana, mental activity. And then, of course, the presiding deity of all of this is the fifth, that is the queen bee, which we call the mind. Wherever the mind goes, everything else goes with it. So whatever action a person performs with the body, with the speech, with the mind, whether it is right or wrong, we're not judging. These 5 are the causes of this activity. It's just a psychophysical fact. That being so, the person of perverse mind, who due to his imperfect understanding looks upon the internal self, or the divine within, the absolute, as the agent, he doesn't truly see. When we say I, the real I is behind it all. And when we say I am doing, well, it's not like that at all. Don't forget, in the Katha Upanishad, we have a city, a body, from 11 gates, 11 gated city. And so within that city, we can see the various comes and goings, and the real owner of the city sits within and doesn't do anything. It's just the presence that does it. See, in a game of chess, it is the king, and you don't say lazy fellow who just stands there. No, he's the prize. The most important piece, but doesn't move anywhere. It's the queen that does everything. That is the king's elegy. So if you're free, the person who is free, yasyani hamkrito, he was free from the notion of egoism, not ego, egoism, and whose understanding is not affected by good or evil, though he does all kinds of things, all kinds of actions. In Arjun's case, it is slaying people. Then he doesn't slay, and he is bound. Or he is not bound. Doesn't slay, nor is he bound, he is ever free. Now here's a different answer, therefore, to the previous question. Attaining samadhi is just a phrase. It's as if we have to get somewhere and we are not there already. No. We are already full and free. That's it. It's not that a royal visitor is to come from the outside. The royal entity is sitting here inside the city of 11 gates. It doesn't come from outside. It doesn't come in a post-mortem condition. It doesn't come in the future. It is already present. Failure to understand this is what we call technically ignorance. I'll repeat that. What is ignorance? Technically, it's the misunderstanding that the perfect ideal is to come. That's ignorance. Real knowledge is to understand it is already here, it is already full, it is already free, it's already perfect. Nothing to attain, nothing to achieve. We don't have to take any competitive or non-competitive gap. It is already there, it just requires revealing. Now it doesn't matter whether you are a householder, whether you have a family, whether you have relationships, or whether you are a monk or in a convent or a monastery or in a cave. The purity of the mind is what counts. So purifying the mind becomes the revealing factor. So the mind itself becomes an illuminator. That's the whole key. It's the key to meditation. It's the key to spiritual practice. It's the key to charitable works. It's the key to acts of worship. It's the key to operating the will through any form of austerity. So, what about then the impetus, the move to action? Why should that be there? And knowledge, the object of knowledge and the knower, jnanam, jneyam, parijnanas, all of these form the threefold impulse to action. All action is from these three gunas, these three elements, if you will. Not exactly qualities. There's a substance behind the quality. That's one mistake that we make when we think of these gunas, because it doesn't make sense if I ask you to give me a cup of whiteness. You'll want to know whether it is white milk or white paint. So these three gunas are working in conjunction with each other, dancing, as it were, in different array. In every single context we find it, including psychological context. And so the knowledge and the object of knowledge and the knower, they form the threefold impulse to action. Because we want to know something, even the most basic biological creature wants to know its environment. There's an object of this knowledge, and then there's also the process of doing it. That's what impels us all to action. And the instrument and the object and the agent, these are threefold constituents of action. And knowledge, action, and agent, these are declared in Sankhya philosophy, that is the science of yoga, or the science of the gunas, I should say, to be of three kinds according to the distinction of gunas. And we've just described them now, but we'll go over them again. The knowledge by which the one imperishable being, that knowledge which we call samadhi, is seen in all beings undivided in the divided. Know that knowledge to be Sattvika. This one statement is so beautiful. The knowledge by which the one imperishable being, we know every other being is perishable. Everything comes, everything goes. We can see it on a daily basis. We can see it on a minute by minute basis and a second by second basis. If we can see that imperishable being in all beings, everything that moves, the undivided in the divided. So I often say, isn't it, that what we see in the external world, so-called, is nothing more than fragmented divinity. Know the knowledge to be Sattvika. But the knowledge, the way of seeing things, by which one sees in all beings various entities of different kinds as distinct from one another, that's Rajasika. Most people operate on this level. And the knowledge which clings to one single fact as if it were the whole thing, time and time again, repeatedly, and is completely irrational, not founded upon truth, and trivial. Know that knowledge to be tamasika. Somebody you meet comes and tells you some trivial thing, let us say some gossip. Oh, did you know so-and-so, and this and that and the other? And any kind of knowledge that you glean from that will be tamasika, full of darkness, full of error, and damaging. And often not true, but even if true, it's of a trivial nature. Most people in this category are involved in trivial pursuit because the one goal of life is being missed. So we often talk and talk and talk, but we have to stand back sometimes a little bit and see what I'm saying and all of this going on. Is it in the category of trivial things, or is it in the category of movement toward that one imperishable being? Or is it in between? Is it, upon my interpretation of the world, as all kinds of divided things taking place? A person who can have a penetrating vision and see the one imperishable thing, the self within all, that kind of knowledge would be Sattvika. An action which has to be done, is obligatory, can't avoid it, is done free from all attachment, without like or dislike. I don't like it, I don't dislike it. I simply doing it with a sense of awareness of the obligatory nature of it. And I am not the doer, by one who not desires of the fruit. I don't seek any reward. The effect will look after itself. That action, of course, is declared as Sattvika. But the action which is done to gratify one's desires or with egoism, in other words, I want a result from something. And the result has to come for my benefit. This combination is there. Or with much effort, that action is declared to be rajasic. Why much effort? Because if we have a true insight into the nature of things, we'll see it as a smoothly running flow. Even in the apparent difficulties that we encounter, a proper interpretation is to see that there's a flow of things that requires a solid sense of faith that all is well. Julian of Norwich, all is well, and all is well, and all manner of things shall be well. So, unaffected by all these things. And later it says, an agent who is free from attachment and egoism. See, egoism, repeated, endowed with perseverance and enthusiasm, and unaffected by success or failure, is called Sattaka. There again. You see, when we do the Enneagram, we can see that there are desires and fears, and these are opposite. And they all come from a wish to sustain a certain agency called self-image or egoism. That action which is done to gratify desires with egoism or with much effort, working uphill as it were, with frustration and anxiety. And that action which is undertaken through ignorance without regard to the consequences, a kind of reckless attitude, with loss, injury, or without regard to one's ability, that of course is tamasaka. Somebody doing something without due diligence. And then what about an agent who is passionate, desires the fruit of action, and somebody also where that leads to a sense of greediness or cruelty or impurity, is easily moved by joy, is easily moved also by sorrow. That, of course, nature is Rajasika. And that person who is unsteady, who is vulgar, stubborn, deceitful, even malicious, lazy, indolent, despondent, and procrastinating, otherwise a good fellow, such an agent is said to be tamasika. So it goes on like that, and it's worth studying. The subject of understanding, knowledge has been covered. Subject of understanding is then the next subject matter. It goes from the 29th stanza to the 32nd stanza, and so it goes on like that. Just in summary, therefore, we're all engaged in action of some kind, and giving up the action is not what we're looking for. Doing the action with a sense of enthusiasm, not to get any gain or reward, but with an attitude of renunciation, doing it here, doing it now, with a great deal of understanding of the presence in the present moment and the infinite invisible which stands right here, right now. As soon as we do that, we are stabilized. As soon as we get out of that frame of reference, we become unstable, completely unstable. And then we have to bring ourselves back again to that inner core of stability. And we have to do that repeatedly until it becomes a habitual standpoint. That habitual standpoint, when there's absolutely no interruption on it, is called samadhi. So I'm keen to leave it off there tonight. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om